guys, I want to share this dream that I had the other day. You know, I told you guys about food in one of my last videos, and how God said that there's cancer in a lot of the foods that we eat, especially foods that are mass produced. But God gave me a dream, and I'm going to share the dream with you guys. Okay? The dream was me and my sister. We were in a dirty tub, and the tub was green, and we were cleaning it, and it had water in it, but the water was dirty. Now, someone from my job, right? So from the job that I used to work at, was telling us to clean it. And then my sister, she put soap on the tub, but she didn't want to scrub it. And I said, my sister is a boss. So I said, come on, boss, clean the tub. And I was scrubbing the tub, but I was like, ew, this water is dirty. And then I said to my former coworker, I said, graphene oxide is in it. And then I said, and then my sister started to scrub the tub, not just put the soap on it. And then my former coworker brought out lobsters, right? So we're in this bathroom, we're in this tub, and we're scrubbing this tub. He puts the lobsters to my face, and I'm like, ew, get the lobsters away from me. And then he starts to put the lobsters in the toilet one by one and just leave them there. Okay, guys. Now, if you don't have the gift of dream interpretation, you're probably like, what in the world is she talking about? But this is the interpretation of the dream. So let me explain. My former coworker was a representative, a union representative, right? And he was someone who we would go to talk about things that we needed a representative for. One of the things would be the, you know what I mean? Because since I'm censored, I can't say it on here on YouTube, but it would be, you know, the V. Okay, so he was representing the V, right? To me, my understanding how God speaks to me. Water represents the Holy Spirit. We were in a green tub. Green represents maturity, spirituality, growth, right? We were in a dirty tub and we were scrubbing it. I was already scrubbing it, but my sister, she just wanted to put the soap on and not scrub it, not really scrub it. She just wanted to put the soap, meaning that she didn't really want to do the work. God was talking, and then there was lobsters. What is lobsters in the Bible? They're unclean food, right? So I was in the tub scrubbing it, right? Doing the work, but the water was dirty. Why was the water dirty? And I said there's graphene oxide in it. Do you guys know what graphene oxide in it? Graphene oxide is? Go back to a few videos ago. It's that black goo that they're putting in the V. That is causing people to have cancer with the 5G. Go look it up, guys. God was trying to tell me that they're putting graphene oxide not only in the V, but in our food. They're putting graphene oxide in the food. And the reason why the water was dirty was because God was telling me the food that you're eating, right, is keeping you from growing deeper in your spiritual life. That's why the tub was green, right? The tub was green. So just to clarify this for you guys, I have been eating what God has been telling me to eat. And like the past 2 days, I completely messed up. I was not eating right. So then that's when God gave me this dream. That's where the lobsters come in, because this former coworker had the lobsters in his hand and he was putting it in my face. And the day before, I was eating and stuff. I was like, this tastes disgusting. Like, it doesn't taste how it used to taste. It tastes really nasty. Like, this food is disgusting. Just like food from the restaurant, it's like disgusting. I don't like it. And in the dream, I was saying, ew, this is nasty. The lobsters, the unclean food. He put it in the toilet because what does a toilet symbolize in a dream? Cleansing, relieving yourself, purifying yourself, right? And it just stayed there in the toilet because it's staying, that unclean food is staying in the body, right? And remember, previously I told you God had told me to get a colon cleanse. So he's basically telling me that I need to get this stuff out of my body. But when I said in the water was graphene oxide, God was telling me that they are putting this black goo in our food. Now you might say, well, if I would see it, right? This black goo, I would be able to see it. I looked it up. Can graphene oxide be transparent? And sure enough, it can be transparent. There are ways to make graphene oxide transparent. So what's the point of what I'm trying to tell you guys? They're putting graphene oxide in your food. Like, if they're not able to inject you with it, then they're putting it in our food.
This right here is what's known as an ingredients label. It's legally required to be printed on the packaging of food items. And if you happen to be one of those people who stands in the aisles of the supermarket looking for the names of ingredients that you can't pronounce and therefore you don't want to ingest into your body, well, then you've most likely come across the names of several ingredients that, perhaps unbeknownst to you, are actually made using nanotechnology. Specifically, they're made through a process which converts things like silver, copper, gold, aluminum, silicon, carbon, as well as different metal oxides into tiny, tiny, tiny atom-sized particles that are quite literally 1/10000000th of a meter in size. If you want a visual for how small that is, up on screen is a graph from the National Center for Electron Microscopy, and it shows you how a strand of DNA, which is about 2 nanometers in diameter, is about 1,000 times smaller than a bacteria organism and about 1,000,000 times smaller than a raindrop. So that is to say, these nanoparticles in our food are very, very small. Now, some of the more common nano-sized ingredients that you might be able to find in your cupboard right now, if you were to look, include things like titanium dioxide, which is used to increase the whiteness of things like milk, yogurt, and sugar. You might find silicon oxide, which is added as an anti-caking agent. You might find iron and zinc dioxides, which are added to increase supposed nutritional value. You might find different silver derivatives, which are added for sterilizing properties. And you might find a host of other ingredients like calcium carbonate, tricalcium phosphates, and so on and so forth. The list is rather long. However, before we move on, in order to really set the stage for you properly here, let me back up for a quick moment and actually explain to you what this is all about. Starting back in the 1990s, so about 30 full years ago, nanotechnology became widely used in the production of food products. That's because scientists discovered that by adding these tiny little components, they were able to make our food more colorful, they were able to make it brighter, creamier, crunchier, and they were even able to keep it fresher for longer. And besides just adding it to the food itself, well, some manufacturers have also added these nanoparticles to the food packaging. As just one example, up on screen you can see a milk carton which utilizes nanotechnology to act essentially as an indicator of the freshness of the milk that's inside. And as you can see, the color of the box actually changes to coincide with the change of the food that's inside. Furthermore, different researchers also found that adding these nano-sized additives to some medicines made them more effective. However, according to more and more consumer protection groups as well as different health experts, well, there appears to be a catch, which is that while these nanoparticles can provide a myriad of benefits, they might come at a price, and that price is our health. Because you see, these particles are so small, so tiny, that studies like this one here that you can see up on screen for yourself show that they can actually breach the blood-brain barrier. And the ironic part is that the researchers in that study, they were actually looking into this function of nanoparticles in order to treat neurological diseases. Because in order to treat them, they actually need medication that can breach the blood-brain barrier. But when it comes to food, for instance, when it comes to your breakfast cereal, that is not a feature of the ingredients that anyone is looking for. Furthermore, besides breaching the blood-brain barrier, other studies have shown that these particles are also able to circulate throughout the body, to get into and get absorbed by the bloodstream and different organs. They have the potential to penetrate our cell walls, and then they might also, at least potentially, create inflammation and disease. Here's, for instance, what Dr. George Pirgiotakis, who is a researcher with the Harvard School for Public Health, here's what he said regarding this matter, quote, "They may pass through the lining of the gut and enter the bloodstream, which may trigger an inflammatory or immune response. They may also build up in various parts of the body, including the lungs, the heart, and reproductive organs." Likewise, Dr. Rolf Halden, who is the director of the Center for Environmental Health Engineering over at Arizona State University, he was quoted in a recent article as saying this, quote, we really don't know what the impact of these particles is. Human exposure is increasing, and we lack the tools to even measure what is arriving in our bodies, where it is deposited, and what it does there. Then he actually went on to compare this unknown impact of nanoparticles to asbestos. Quote, asbestos itself is relatively benign. It's an inorganic material. What makes it toxic and makes it kill 90,000 people a year is that it has particles that lodges in human tissue. Furthermore, there was a study published in July of 2020 by researchers over at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. And in the study, they were specifically researching the effects of titanium dioxide, which is one of the most well-known additives. It's commonly added to things like gum, candy, drinks, milk, desserts, and so on. And what these researchers did was that they gave titanium dioxide to two different groups of mice. And in order to isolate the effects specifically to this nanoparticle, one group of mice was fed a low-fat diet and the other group was fed a high-fat diet. And what wound up happening was that both groups experienced changes in their gut bacteria, including the inflammation of their colons, which can lead to abdominal pain and even diarrhea. And although both sets of mice experienced this inflammation, the obese mice that were fed the higher fat diet, they had more pronounced symptoms. Now, you might look at the study and you might say, hey, Roman, that's great, but if these nanoparticles have been used in food production since the 1990s, and they are found in over quite literally 2,000 different food items, then why are you citing studies on mice? What about studies on humans? Well, that's the million-dollar question. Because looking at the situation, you would assume that surely the US government wouldn't haphazardly allow food companies to introduce these new ingredients into the products that we buy on our store shelves without undergoing rigorous testing and authorization. And if you think that, well, you would only be half right. Because as it turns out, the FDA, which is of course the agency that's tasked with overseeing these additives, they are themselves trying their best to keep up with this new and evolving technology, and they're essentially playing a balancing game between the potential benefits while mitigating the risks that these nanoparticles actually cause. And as it currently stands, the FDA recognizes nanoparticles within food with a designation called GRAS, which stands for Generally Recognized as Safe. As long as the manufacturer is already using the same ingredient in its larger form, well, they can use it in its nanoparticle form. Meaning that if, let's say, a cereal manufacturer is, for instance, using titanium dioxide as an additive in their cereal, well, then they can also use titanium dioxide nanoparticles in their cereal as well, and the FDA will label that cereal as being GRAS. Here's specifically what a guidance document from the FDA said in this matter. And just for your reference, this document was released all the way back in 2007. Quote, the FDA's Nanotechnology Task Force concluded that the agency's authorities are generally comprehensive for products subject to pre-market authorization requirements such as drugs, biological products, devices, and food and color additives, and that these authorities give the FDA the ability to obtain detailed scientific information needed to review the safety and, as appropriate, the effectiveness of the products. For products not subject to pre-market authorization requirements, such as dietary supplements, cosmetics, and food ingredients that are generally recognized as safe, otherwise known as GRAS, manufacturers are generally not required to submit data to the FDA prior to marketing, and the agency's oversight capacity is less comprehensive. Meaning, again, that the FDA's requirement for reviewing and confirming the safety and efficacy of nanotechnology ingredients only applies to a certain subset of food-related products. And so, if something is already recognized as being generally safe, then the nanoparticle derivative of that same substance is also generally assumed to be safe.
Been able to make graphene on many different substrates. Previously, we could only make graphene on materials that were like polyimide, a particular type of polymer, but now what we found is by tuning the laser a little bit differently and defocusing the laser, which first carbonizes the material, and then we take the carbonized material and convert it into graphene. So what you see here is you don't see ink. This is not ink. This is not the addition of ink to a material. This is taking the material itself, the wood itself, and converting it into graphene, and the laser allows us to write it into any pattern that we wish. This is on a piece of wood, or we can do it even on foods, like this is a potato. So remember what graphene is. It's these single atomic thick sheets of graphite, and now we take these and we put a few of them on top of each other as we convert the material itself, a piece of bread, and so you can convert the carbohydrates that are within bread to graphene, or we can do it on a coconut, so you can take a coconut and convert that into graphene. Now, why would we want to have something like this? This is all conductive, and so it can conduct electricity. So what we can do now is we can make electronics embedded within fabrics and make electronics embedded within wood.
So right now we're going to be lasing a cardboard box here, and the significance of being able to put electronic traces on cardboard boxes is that it has a lot of potential commercial significance in being able to write RFID tags directly on boxes, so you can either tell where it's been, or you can put a sensor on the box and see what kind of conditions it's been exposed to. Currently, people are using RFID tags that have been manufactured and they attach them to the boxes, but being able to directly convert a box would be really valuable.
Why would one want edible electronics? Well, first of all, let me start with, very often we don't see the advantage of something early on, but when we make it available, people start seeing the real advantage. So can you even have electronics embedded on food and then say use this as a heat circuit to heat the food more easily? If there's, say, an RFID tag written onto this potato, where has it been, how long has it been stored, what's its country of origin and its city of origin, and what path did it go to get to your table? All that can be embedded not on a separate tag that's placed on the food, but directly on the food itself. And these can also have sensors that would detect E. coli, sensors that would detect microorganisms that you might not want, that could immediately light up and give you a signal that you don't want to eat this. So being able to barcode food, in a sense, could have real advantages.